Hello, everybody. My name is Kim McCade. I'm the CEO and co-founder of ProtoStars. And we're here today to speak to you about the EU Cyber Resilience Act. And maybe a little bit about myself. So my own founder journey began at a young age. I was taking gas masks to school, like some of the issues going on today. And we eventually got into Europe through deportation. And that led to a lot of experience with security and financial resilience. So I went on to lead service delivery for Bank of Ireland networks and got good exposure there in terms of understanding operational technology and understanding some of the um, configurations then for the networks. And it really was the crossover between hardware and software. I'd started my career originally in Orange in Cairo. I was doing network engineering there as well. And for the last 10 years, I've been doing software development for high performance systems, mainly for high potential startups that are supported with the Irish government's investment agency, Enterprise Ireland. So it's been an interesting journey, learning a lot about the software development life cycle. And over the last couple of years, there's been a big push from the Europeans' perspective of how to establish a common criteria in Europe for cybersecurity. So you have a lot of differences, obviously, between the member states in the EU, and it's quite complex. It's not quite as in synergy as somewhere like America, for example, where they have the states and running quite seamlessly together in how they implement legislation. Whereas in the EU, you have quite a complex establishment already, very regulation driven. And it became evident that the digital products had breaches in one country and very quickly they could be impacting another country. So in a matter of minutes, somebody in Ireland could be breached and all of a sudden the user base in Germany or Spain or France is getting impacted. So they went and established the European Cybersecurity Competence Center, ECCC, and from there, the EU Cyber Resilience Act was born. So I'll share some slides and talk you through this, and really happy to take any questions. But maybe if I could just, first of all, show on stage a poll. Have you heard of the EU Cyber Resilience Act or the software CE mandate? Just curious to see if there's anybody out there that's already aware about this. Okay, quite a lot of people. There's a few people there that have heard of it, but a lot of people just haven't, and it's still quite new to everybody here in the EU, let alone outside of the EU. So this is something that's going to be enforced in March 2027. So it's just been enacted last month, but it's going to revolutionize the internet. For the first time ever, there's going to be a legal mandate to enforce a software CE mark on any digital product, whether that's built in the EU or it's being imported into the EU itself. So I'll get sharing here. Yeah. Sorry, can you see my screens there? Is that okay, everybody? Yeah, I think so. So at ProtoStars, we took the big challenge of taking a security LLM approach to enhance our compliance with the EU cybersecurity regulations, specifically looking at the software CE mark being our North Star. So again, the EU Cyber Resilience Act is due to be enforced in 2027. The regulation is about putting a software CE mark onto digital products and goods, and this is to assure cybersecurity in software development life cycles, to enhance the transparency of security information for people. So this is a big one. When you buy a product, you don't know what kind of security is being invested in the product, and this can impact business and consumer rights. So the Act should establish a common criteria for cybersecurity in the EU market. The big challenge is now for board members. So cybersecurity accountability at top level. Are people on the board who are not technical savvy meant to know about the regulation and the obligations of these legal mandates? Because there's a big shift happening now in Europe in that you will be held to account. If you're on a board and there's been a big enough breach, you can be personally fined, you can be taken off that board, and it's shifted the perspectives now. People are waking up in terms of, okay, CISO has a lot more weight and gravitas, and they have to do better in terms of understanding their own knowledge of ROI and security. And moreover, how do they validate and maintain complex security and compliance? So it involves not just security or developers, it involves legal teams, risk, finance people, operations, and other executives in the company. And even for government, there's big challenges in member states. At Protostars, we've been speaking with the National Cybersecurity Centre of Ireland and with Netherlands and Spain. We've been out speaking with a lot of the national coordination centres for cybersecurity. And they're all under obligations of the authorities in the EU to establish assessment bodies. And that means training, means knowledge about cybersecurity certification and distribution of digital certs, record keeping, reporting, and moreover, cross-border information sharing. They have to be able to share this with their EU neighbor, whether it's in German or Italian, different languages. They have to be able to understand the complex requirements of conformity assessment bodies. So the CAB for short, or conformity assessment body, is the authority responsible for administrative task and distribution of the software CE mark. And for these organizations, they have to contextualize the sector this digital product is in, the organization structure that it's from, the degree of product technology. Is this a piece of software that's connecting to a robot, or is it something of a loyalty app for a local franchise? Big differences there in the mass and serial nature of the production process. So we started to look at understanding a CE health check, something like a vehicle check. You take it, in Europe to get its annual NCT in Ireland. This is basically like a check to say that your vehicle is roadworthy. And it's the same thing. You have to go to the mechanic before you take the test and you get a bit of feedback. So we started looking at how we could bring organizations as close as possible as we could to saying you're ready for your software CE mark or your audit. Leveraging, of course, AI and context awareness there. So we could give board members an easy, practical way to get a feel for where they sit to compliance. So there's understanding the board making decisions, there's reducing the level of risk, but in order to do that, you need to provide reporting to each department in organizations, and taking this again out of cybersecurity and tech teams. And more so at a lower level in terms of the product and the code itself, start looking at nuanced ways to avoid signal fatigue and looking at how we could bridge code testing with compliance controls. So just in a quick summary, there's three key components in terms of what we looked at. And first of all, it was understanding the integrations. Were we going to be doing this through APIs or setting up dedicated secure environments? Or do we start looking at installable packages and SDKs? We built the cyber resilience platform to help distribute and test. So in order to bring this to market, we knew it was going to be a long roadmap. And we were looking at potentially 2 to 3 years before we could actually reach a very good feel for product market fit. So we began starting a customer development and product development model by working with customers in different ways. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that and how you can get really good data to start enriching it with the security professionals and start doing your training. The AI component itself was looking at 3 small LLMs, and maybe I'll just talk a little bit about them. The first is to chunk and tag large code repositories to understand what kind of code base we were working with. The second, in order to bridge code testing and compliance controls so that we could understand that the checks that we were doing were going to be efficient enough in the context of product properties and again, like the organization structure, the market sector, and degree of product technology. So the third LLM was really about summarizing those controls and the um, parts of the act that were applicable to the organization. The approach that we took, just on a very high level, we looked at the regulation and standards from a very useful document that I'll share at some point today, which is published by the European Cybersecurity Agency, ENISA. And this is a very good document that can map the Cyber Resilience Act requirements to standards. So those are the ISO standards that we all know and love very well. It's some form of gap analysis is communicated in the document, but for a starting point, it was really a great opportunity for us to say, look, there's a good resource out there. We have a guide towards our North Star and we can keep going. Part of the integrations were going to be complex, setting up dedicated environments and convincing people to on board on those environments. So we looked at the existing GitHub application integrations that we could deliver and started to test out some early versions of a security-focused LLM. We started benchmarking that with independent and third-party application security testing tools and started putting, again, a smaller alpha product out there so that we could actually talk to people and understand their feedback. I think it's really important that you're always listening to the market and being market-driven, avoiding bias, of course, with the development of our AI as well. Some of the positioning we wanted to look at, there's some great tools out there for application security testing. We didn't want to be competing with them. They're already helping prevent attacks. There's great compliance automation tools out there that are helping prevent abuse of terms and conditions. We, again, didn't want to be competing with them. So we looked at the software CE mark and really focused our efforts on how could we increase the efficiency for the auditing process. How could we reduce cyber risk and improve compliance to avoid prosecution of these companies that are going to be held liable? A big part of what we were looking to achieve, bringing back the question of financial resilience, is, how can we promote or advocate financial inclusion with this act? Because realistically, if you want to trade on the EU market after 2027, we don't have a CE mark. It's going to be very difficult for you to do so. So I'll just stop there and maybe go back to another poll and see if I can just get some feedback on the product side of things. So do you have a digital product in the EU? And if so, I'm wondering how this is going to fare. So quite a significant number. Yeah. So roughly 15% will be in the next 3 years. Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to get another slide deck up here to share a little bit more about the approach that we're taking. I'm really happy to answer any questions that come through the chat as well. Okay, so okay, just getting this ready now for you. So some of the challenges about getting the AI piece ready and built isn't really necessarily technical. It's really about getting the right people and the right thinkers in the room together. So the European Cybersecurity Competence Center has put a call out for organizations. And we've been to Lyon in Spain just last month and presented our concept with some positive feedback. So we know we're on track to where we're going. And just wanted to show a little bit more about some of the other key stakeholders or types of organizations that we're talking with. So the development and deployment of advanced key technologies is really where we're looking to play a role in Europe, and developing AI for the EU Cyber Resilience Act and doing that in a post-quantum world. So we have the technology, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a moment with some more insights into some of the AI use cases and how we've been approaching some of that. But it's clear that we needed to work alongside people that are already in the industry providing certifications. So there is a manual process for the CE certification with the National Standards Authority of Ireland, and they do a fantastic job there already. So we're looking to see could we augment that, and are in talks with them about pushing forward for an EU project proposal. We've been through the EY Startup Academy in Frankfurt in Tech Quartier. There's an incredible 4.2 trillion venture flow going through that startup innovation hub, working with corporates there. So getting a place where we could grow awareness and access again and put this out to market in a safe, secure way with guardrails, but at the same time, really have a pipeline there of data coming through that could help with training is something we wanted to do through a program-led initiative. Some of the cross-border information sharing would need to be starting with um, national coordination centers that we work with specifically on a project. So we are actually closer to working with Netherlands than Sweden at the moment. The Irish National Cybersecurity Centre are very supportive as well in terms of engagement. So, there's this initiative there that how do we connect products in to these coordination centers that are responsible for each member state's security. From a cloud computing perspective, we're looking to work with OVH. So we're working with infrastructure that's based in the EU. Okay. And apologies, just a few to the deck to bring to here. So looking at the types of AI for security audit reporting is important to understand, again, who is the main person we're targeting this for at the start, and where can we get the greatest value to continue the journey. So it's helping CISOs achieve cybersecurity compliance. And to put into context as well, the EU Cyber Resilience Act is one of many regulations that are coming into enforcement, but they would have crossovers. And I just wanted to share a little bit more about the big change for enterprise leaders due to this shift in cybersecurity regulation. And it's really all about impacting reputational risk in these organizations. NIS2 is aimed at large critical infrastructure providers and essential services. So this is network and information systems. Penalty can be up to 10 million or 2% of global turnover, plus personal liabilities on the board. DORA is aimed at financial services. So the Digital Operational Resilience Act would look at everything, including the supply chain security that's in the financial services industry. Again, 1% of global turnover or daily fines for up to 6 months. The FIDA financial data access, really about being able to make it easier for you to shift information between providers in that financial services sector. And then the Cyber Resilience Act is the product. So if you had a electricity provider or gas networks provider and they've got some kind of business to consumer facing app, then that's going to be applicable for the software CE mark. If you're a bank and you've got consumer product out there, it's going to be applicable for the software CE mark. And even both of these, NIS2 and DORA, you're going to be needing to provide some secure code analysis and awareness about how you're doing that on an ongoing basis. So the problem that we were looking at again is going back to the legal and financial risks and accountability of those organization leaders, the operational efficiencies of maintaining ongoing compliance, how to avoid penalties and reputational damage when these breaches happen, and how to get a grip on these variable costs. And what we've found, looking at more traditional software and how that can relate to non-compliance, is a limited coverage that can happen from scope and gaps and incomplete testing. A lot of false positives, signal fatigue, again, failure to detect, making it difficult to identify when there's really an issue there or how you potentially flagged one that wasn't an issue. Integrating challenges as well, many silos, fragmented security and human error. Impact on performance, these slow scans and manual code reviews are creating more risk than helping. Scalability issues with complex code and unreliable compliance. There's a distinct lack of real-time reporting that's being called out in these European calls for action. And it's really thinking about, how can we get digital products connected in to security in, not just in organizations, but at a national level. Configuration and maintenance. We all know that we've seen the latest CrowdStrike issue, how impactful it can be. The regulatory updates as well, keeping up and understanding regulatory change and making the changes not just on a product level, but again, across those teams between security, technology, finance, risk, operations. Reporting documentation. It's not okay just to have your technical specification document or your functional specification document, but making sure that you've demonstrated your penetration testing on a regular basis, making sure that you have things like your software bill of materials, another important artifact that's expected to be shown at any time. Then costs of resources. So just bringing it back to the ENISA document, the Cyber Resilience Act requirements and standards mapping. We have 3 distinct LLMs to chunk and tag code for scalability, to bridge code testing and compliance controls with LLM2, and then to gain insight in the context of an organization with LLM3. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of an insight into some of the ways that we were looking to get moving with capturing information on the front line. And this is actually dealing with SMEs and cybersecurity professionals to help us get into a state of being able to train the LLMs efficiently enough. Okay. Oops. Excuse me. So maybe just going to look at some of the questions here. Is there a compliance-centered evaluation framework or approach on open source available for assessing how well large language models align with principles defined in the EU Cyber Resilience Act? Thanks, Mahmoud. It's a great question. We're not finding that there is anything out there with regards to that compliance-centered evaluation framework. We are looking to pioneer this. I can just maybe share a little bit in the sense that we, as a startup, we're early enough ourselves, but we raised investment with the Irish government investment agency, and as I mentioned, we did present to the ECCC last month there. So if if you wanted to get a deeper insight, there's a scoping document that could show some of the issues maybe in terms of where the big gaps out there in the industry that the EU are calling for. These are part of the EU Digital Europe program, and maybe I'm just going to see if I can share this, give you a bit better insight. So the Digital Europe program has calls for proposals. And I'm sorry, it's not directly answering your question, but there's good evidence there in terms of understanding where there's gap in the markets if you're looking to put some technologies together. This is very European focused, though. I should say that, this is in terms of the funding here, this is for European companies and European companies only. If you have establishment there, it would do well. But at the same time, these kind of technologies are really, we're moving closer towards bleeding edge at this stage in terms of what we're developing out there in the frameworks. There's a lot of need for support to get this up and running in terms of technology gaps in the market, not just technology, but from strategy and operations as well. So the specific one that we were looking at ourselves that I had brought up in a previous slide was to do with the development and deployment of advanced key technologies. And this is where we're looking to bring a compliance-centered evaluation framework using open source technologies to align our LLMs with the Cyber Resilience Act. And given your current research, personalizing counterfactual explanations and explainable AI, could these experiential AI or transparent AI techniques support compliance with the EU Cyber Resilience Act, particularly in transparency and ethical AI? Yeah, there's definitely a call for greater transparency in how these things are done, and part of the reason that I'm on here today myself as well is to reach out to the industry and to bring these efforts out to the organizations that have the ability to communicate and get the approach using different stakeholders in the cyber ecosystem. So, bringing it out to like Tech Cordier, for example, and being able to bring in national coordination centers, bring in the people that are running the programs, bring in the people that are running the certification schemes, and then the ones that are actually doing the conformity assessments. We need to be able to put this out in a way that it's explainable, and even the investors themselves are coming to us and wanting to have greater transparency. So, putting the documentation and diagrams into regular sprint reviews or retrospectives where they can be updated is an important part, and being able to present that information to a compliance officer is becoming more and more important as well. Okay. So yeah, I'm wondering how technical to go with some of the explanation of what we're doing, and maybe bringing up some product screens is maybe a better approach for now. So I'll just bring some here. But if anybody would like to have more of an insight into the AI technicalities, maybe I can get some feedback on the chat, and happy to share some of that as well. Sorry, just getting these screens up here. So part of the way we help communicate to the board members or people that are not necessarily in the DevSecOps teams is to provide a dashboard approach. And we've been working with the um, national government cyber grant scheme, which is a EU-funded initiative to help improve cybersecurity for the smaller organizations. So this is an approach that we are able to start looking at running a cyber review call, taking the transcript and start pre-populating some of the cyber reviews. So to avoid the manual data entry for the people out there in terms of the ones that are providing the audit, we provide a stage-gated workflow for that. You know, the client profile is something that's fairly easy, taking into account what a risk profile could look like. And then we start to get an understanding more about the type of risk level that could be in that organization. The type of questions that we're talking about um, in this can get quite complex, and in order to deliver something that is seamless, you really have to find a way to get off the Excel way of doing things. Looking at the software updates and the types of controls and the probing questions and validation steps. This can be quite cumbersome to fill out while you're with a client on site, and can get quite exhaustive for any type of auditor. So, what we're looking to do with the sorry, I'm just wondering if that Excel was showing there. Yeah, with the approach that we've taken is again to look at some of the voice to code capabilities of AI, and start looking at how we can get a security professional to come in and support some of that process. So the document I'm going to share here is getting a little bit more technical on the side of things. We won't keep keep it going too much. But what we have is a user interface that I just showed you with the dashboard and the audits. We're using Vue.js on the front end there, and PHP Laravel on the back end. So the main system is to look at really analyzing risk, to produce a software bill of materials, and to have proper identity access management, so that the very nature of vulnerability disclosure can be done in a safe and secure way. Some of the core AI and what we're doing, is understanding the pre-processing of the code repository that we're integrating with. Understanding that there's going to be a lot of files there that we don't need to scan, and how do we do this more efficiently is some of the challenges that we had to overcome. A lot of the basics, in terms of understanding the correct prompts to be asking are things that we're working on now, but also looking at leveraging some of OpenAI's ADA for sentiment analysis. The chunking and tagging specifically, is using OpenAI ADA. We've been benchmarking with different approaches as well. Some of the vector storage with Annoy tech stack and some of the top K matching as well with Annoy there. Okay, so again, just to look at some of the complexities of how you'd be looking at typical audits and assessments. We might have a type of control category and the type of standards that we need to match that to. You'd be giving individuals a type of score in terms of their maturity level, and looking at the type of requirement that is needed for this control set or category and what we've actually found in the audit. And from there, we start to categorize again the level of compliance according to a certain requirement. Those requirements that we've been looking at, I just wanted to give you a quick glance at that ESA document as well. The document is there available online, or if everyone would like anything to be sent afterward, feel free to get in touch. The requirements mapping from the Cyber Resilience Act are really broken down into, you could consider maybe two sections. The first one is looking at the security requirements relating to the product properties, and the second section is more about the vulnerability handling requirements itself. So in order to work through the software CE certification, you want to be looking at the types of standards that are applicable to each type of requirement. So I'm just going with the first one when we're looking at the products with digital elements. Do they have security by design in them, and how do you go about this? So we looked at understanding ways to do risk analysis and to do the code analysis with OWASP's application security framework. And the LLMs are proving quite well and able to bridge some of that testing for us. But what we do have here as well in the document is something that clearly outlines the type of ISO standard that's associated. Where's the rationale in using that type of ISO standard? What are the gaps there? And then most importantly, the place that they can be applied to in the software development lifecycle. So making sure that you have a secure software development lifecycle is the overall objective here. But anybody looking to get further into the EU Cyber Resilience Act, this can be a great way to do that and to understand more. Okay, well, thank you for everybody for your time. I hope that was a good introduction. I'm happy to do any Q&A after. Thank you. So happy to go into more of the technicalities again. I'm just looking here to see if how I'm doing on time. Oh, thank you very much. We're very grateful that you found it a good presentation. It's quite a complex topic to get into and to deliver. Um, yeah, grateful for your time and attention, and I'm very happy to connect with anybody afterwards. Um, okay, well, look, if there's still some time remaining, I shall do a little bit more myself on explaining some of the approaches that we took, and again, just happy to share anything I can in the chat. And if somebody would like to share any questions. Um, okay. So the practical approach really to exploring how AI can revolutionize cybersecurity and the gap analysis, we needed to look at understanding a security professional conducting their own audit. And when we were transcribing the information, we had to emphasize data protection, so ensuring that the sensitive information identified was redacted before analysis. So the goal there was to generate precise and actionable security insights without compromising confidentiality. So how that worked really was looking at extracting the relevant text. We started by converting those transcripts into documents that were machine readable text and preparing them for seamless analysis. So, working with NUR, named entity recognition, for redacting sensitive information, enabled us to look at details like names or locations, other identifiers, and then mask them or replace them to ensure data privacy. And preparing data for AI as well, it's important that sanitization step is handled well. We can't emphasize enough in order to optimize for analysis that it has to become input for our chosen AI model. So you need to make sure that the data going in is sanitized correctly. And again, for our OpenAI model at this stage of our startup growth, we are leveraging part of the OpenAI ChatGPT 4 model, and we've integrated this into our application to create an experimental um, cybersecurity consultant. We're able to look at some of the queries that need to be answered on a fairly high level, and provide some professional recommendations, and then maintain factual format, in terms of, be clear, have a confident tone with actionable insights. So the prompt design for that kind of engineering, we were looking at a contextual role, and understanding the model is guided um, always by an actual accredited CSIP security professional there that can help enhance the relevance and accuracy of its responses. And the instructional prompting. So the model was instructed to analyze the conversation, address questions, and provide suggestions as needed. And the tone that we used again was direct to maintain professional, formal approach, and it would output and generate answers to questions that were posed, not just by the end clients, but the professional themselves, maybe sometimes needing to, just get a jump on some of the extra research that will be needed. We looked at seamless API integrations as well in order to bring this solution to market, and to provide a real-time analysis approach into larger workflows. In order to help training as well, we did document processing. So this would be important in terms of looking at the organizational policies and procedures of the companies we were working with, and also to help in terms of reading good quality security professional texts that are out there to support with the training. So getting from raw data to readable text, we had to look at parsing and making that a bit easier. Looking at standard documents that you would have in an organizational policy, such as access control, and marking it down using tools like llama parse and ensuring clarity and ease of analysis. And we'd be chunking then for efficiencies. So documents would be divided into roughly around 4,000 characters, where we were creating manageable pieces for processing that way. To look at embedding for actionable or insightful analysis, we would search using a pre-trained model, and we were generating text embeddings. So typically using natural processing, natural language processing, and semantic search, information retrieval, and clustering. And the improvement that we were looking to do was to move past VAAI, which we started looking more towards OpenAI's ADA in order to get better accuracy and meaningful data retrieval. The vector storage that we were looking at using Annoy was something that we were fairly happy with in terms of retrieving documents and embeddings. It was really fast, and looking at those similarities for search was something that we were looking to say was some of the least painful processes. Top-notch retrieval queuing system. We looked at understanding a little bit more of accuracy and re-ranking using flash re-rank and cross encoder. So we've been through quite a difficult process, and a lot of our sprints these days are spending time doing text cleanup, trying to get page normalization of good quality text out there that we can use, and focusing those embeddings on how to bring them to cybersecurity professionals out there on the front line. Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. I see a question there. Okay, with the EU Cyber Resilience Act setting new standards, how can AI-powered security audits and code analysis redefine compliance, ensuring not just adherence, but proactive protection against emerging threats? Yeah, so when you're looking at some of the nuances with LLMs, it's looking at these zero-day vulnerabilities, and being able to look at the behavior of code from a product perspective. There's some great work out there analyzing networks and pattern recognition, and your understanding threat detection there and threat intelligence. That there seems to be a disconnect between stakeholders in the cyber ecosystem. So I think it's really bringing it back to some of the basics of key stakeholder engagement, understanding more of the implications of incident reporting to your wider ecosystem. Again, taking this outside of the organization and looking at it from a national level, and understanding a bit more about the cross team or cross organization collaboration. In terms of the code analysis and evaluation as well, I think that some of the proactive protection against emerging threats is really understanding the nature of false positives. And we'd be looking to do code analysis and evaluation all the time with subject matter experts, and really double checking on each of those results that come out with the LLMs. But they do have much wider spread and scope in terms of bringing other people into the conversation, and that's where the expertise can start to get outside of the traditional deterministic programming or software tools that are out there, and really be a bit more proactive by bringing other people into the conversation and translating some of the jargon. Simple stuff like that can be really helpful. So just like to say thank you again, and goodbye to all the audience, and happy to connect on LinkedIn afterwards. Thank you.